around one of the most beautiful parts of becoming mindfully sovereign, and it has to do with emotional intelligence. We are indeed sovereigns, queenly. We are that force of at the helm of our emotions, meaning when the emotion shows up, it doesn't have to completely overtake you. We want to start understanding the parts of the self that are showing up from a place of reactive, right? Rather than from a place of empowered when you are experiencing that emotion. Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self-authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Safa, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self-authority, learning the art of self-seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. Hello. Happy Monday and welcome back, beautiful soul. I am so excited for our conversation today. When am I not, right? But I am. I want us to have a conversation around one of the most beautiful parts of becoming mindfully sovereign, and it has to do with emotional intelligence. This is one of the pieces that when we fully immerse ourselves in the realm of emotional intelligence, it gives us permission to further understand ourselves, further fall in love with ourselves, and also it gives us permission to take up space in this world in a way that maybe we're not accustomed to. Because from a very early age, we have been taught that feeling is too something. It's too intense. Maybe it's too uncomfortable for other people to be around you. If you've ever been crying and someone has immediately tried to make you stop crying, it's because they are uncomfortable. Not so much that your crying is a bad thing or that it's not welcome. And so you get the idea. So we don't necessarily always understand that side of emotion. Plus, a lot of times, because we've been internalizing this idea that emotions are maybe a little too volatile and a little too intense, a little too much for this world, then what we tend to do is stuff those emotions down. And number one, they end up getting stored places in the body. So one of the things that I always say when I'm teaching yoga is, if you feel like a certain emotion is showing up for you in the presence of a posture, for example, if you're feeling very angry all of a sudden or very sad when you are in pigeon pose, which is actually the pose that broke me down the very first time I did yoga, I was ugly crying. So if you're feeling that emotion, it doesn't mean anything about what is going on in that moment necessarily. For example, it doesn't mean that the teacher is making you cry, or it doesn't mean that you are feeling completely heartbroken, even if you walked in there feeling amazing. It could. It could also be that this is old information that has been stuffed in the body because it hasn't been allowed to feel or to be expressed in the real world. So one of the things that we don't always talk about when it comes to trauma, and you've heard me talk about this a little bit on the show, especially with some of my guests that do more of somatic healing, right? One of the things that happens is that in our lived experience, the things that we go through, we don't just go through them and then they get stuck in our minds and that's it. And then we move on from them and we forget about them and that's how we heal from them. That's not how it works. So our bodies go through the same things that we are going through, and they go through those things in real time permanently. So your mind doesn't know that yesterday was yesterday and today is today. Your mind thinks that the thing that you are reflecting back upon, for example, your first heartbreak from high school, the thing that you're reflecting back upon that is bringing up all those thoughts, all those emotions, your body thinks that it's happening right now in real time. It doesn't know this is past. And also it's the same when we start projecting things into the future. A lot of the reasons why, and I'm not saying this is the only reason, because trust me, I experience anxiety too. And I if someone made a blanket statement about this, I would be upset too. No, what I'm saying is some or one of the factors of anxiety and anxious mind is that we tend to future gaze, future project, and then our body feels like we are in that future situation where in our minds the worst has already happened, and so the tension comes in and a lot of things begin to spike up, to include our nervous system becomes dysregulated and so on and so forth. And so stuffing down your emotions isn't the way to go. It may feel like that is the safest route because, again, we do live in a society and in an environment where emotions don't always feel very welcome. In fact, most of the time, we are surrounded by people in places and within situations where when emotion shows up, we are much more rewarded for remaining stoic and for not showing said emotions than for feeling them and or expressing them. The other side of this is we also want to be in the learned art of mastery of that self-awareness with the emotion within ourselves, because we are indeed sovereigns, queenly. We are that force of at the helm of our emotions, meaning when the emotion shows up, it doesn't have to completely overtake you. And I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes we fear emotion. We fear that if we feel the fullness of a heartbreak or the complete head to toe fire rage of anger, that we're going to get caught up in that realm permanently. And I promise you, no matter what you have felt, that isn't going to happen. You're not going to get stuck in there forever. And the more freedom we give that emotion to be felt, to be understood, to hold space, to exist in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts, in our bodies, the better the outcome. The more likely we are to understand this is a moment, it'll move through, and I will move through, and I will be okay. And then you can come back and regulate your nervous system, co-regulation, right? So we want to start understanding and we want to start relating to our emotions from a place of empowered action. We want to start seeing them as something beautiful, something that we get to have a IQ toward. We have that RQ, right? The IQ that is to our minds and how intelligent we are. And we have the EI, emotional intelligence, which is going to be that part of the self that gets to expand into more depth. It gets to be intelligent. So emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways that are going to be uplifting, ways that are going to fulfill you, ways that are going to allow you to deepen your connection, your intimacy with other people, ways that are going to leave you feeling like you are the ruler, the queen, the sovereign of your life. And this includes the ability to recognize your own emotions, your feelings. You want to not only recognize them, but know what it is that they are teaching you, how it is that they feel in your body. A lot of times, especially with people who are very smart, I love that I get to work with very highly driven, high achieving, high powered, high value women so often. I love it. And one of the things that I notice most often is that because they're so intelligent, they are these amazing forces of nature. Sometimes they'll get caught up in their minds, meaning that they understand. They're very knowledgeable. They know what it is that is going on. And if I ask them about their feeling, how something makes them feel, how it feels in their bodies, they'll often struggle a little bit more with that because it's not something we've been taught to do quite as readily, and it's not something that we talk about that often, and it feels a little bit foreign. But you want to think about it in those terms. For example, if you are someone who fears anger. You don't want to feel and or experience anger because you fear that you're going to lash out at someone. You fear you're going to tear people down. You fear that you turn into a monster when you're angry. We want to start understanding the parts of the self that are showing up from a place of reactive, right? Rather than from a place of empowered when you are experiencing that emotion. And so we want to think about first, where Do you feel this in your body? Does it feel like a pit in your stomach? Does it feel like your face is turning red? Does it feel like your fingertips are going numb? Does it feel like you're sweating, right? Are you experiencing a physical, full body felt experience of sweating? Wow, that was a very long-winded way to get there. So are you experiencing that? What does that feel like for you? And what are the thoughts? What are the things that come along with that rage, with that anger? Is it a judgment? Is it a sense of being betrayed? Is it I'm being attacked and therefore I have to be in the right? What is going on underneath the surface? And it's valid for you to experience those emotions. I also want to super highlight that because, again, just the way that we have been raised to believe certain things and the environment that we move in, a lot of times we've been taught, whether on purpose or just with little details here and there, like someone telling you not to cry when you were a little kid because if you cry, you'll look ugly. Then we internalize these things and we don't understand that feeling, that emotion is valid. And we'll start doing this thing where we self-dismiss. We'll start doing this thing where, well, I shouldn't feel that way because, or, oh, I'm being dramatic. I'm being too over the top. I'm being too something. And we want to understand that our feelings are completely valid. Now, that doesn't mean that we act rashly upon them. It doesn't mean that we go at the effect of them. It does mean that we understand that our feelings are there and they're there for a reason. That also doesn't mean that your feelings are the other person's responsibility, by the way. Your feelings are your responsibility. You get to take ownership and accountability for them. And yes, you could be having a conversation or an interaction with someone who does something, for example, to cross your boundaries or to say something that hurts you, and your feelings are valid, and you can say to that person, hey, this really hurt. And you can hold yourself and the other person accountable with emotional intelligence without the immediate lashing out. You said this on purpose. You don't think that I am blah, blah, blah. You don't care about me. You hurt my feelings and now you need to apologize. That's not showing up from a place of personal sovereignty. That's not showing up from a place of embracing yourself and self-loving. That is not showing up from a place where you can grow and deepen your intimacy. That is being very much at the effect of something. So that's not feeling your feelings and validating them. That's feeling something, using the word validation, becoming reactive, and then lashing out. So having a reactive feeling or a reactive state of existence toward this thing that has happened. So that's not emotional intelligence. You want to think about the room and the depth and the breadth that you want to have in your life from a place of deep self-authority where you can have conversations that are challenging and that feel difficult and still say, okay, I understand that this is showing up and right now, I need to take a little break. I will be back. When I come back, we can talk about this. For now, I need space. I need to go for a quick walk. Go, feel, process, integrate, understand, self-seduce a little bit, get to know yourself, come back and then pick it up when you are ready to. So we also don't have to force ourselves to have it all out right then and there because we are feeling this emotion. So yes, your emotions are valid and they're not a ticket. They're not a one-way ticket to be explosive, to be reactive, to be mean to other people, to demean other people, to deflect. They're not a one-way ticket to have a reactive response to something, right? You want to start understanding that these emotions exist and they are valid within you, and it is up to you to learn from them and to grow from them and to choose through them and with them. A lot of times you'll wake up in the morning and you'll feel a certain way. Maybe you wake up feeling a little grumpy. You don't really know why. And you maybe sit down and do a little journaling and okay, nothing is coming up. You're still feeling grumpy. Okay. You get to choose to move through your day with awareness of, and almost hand in hand with that emotion, without judging it, without depreciating it, without trying to force your way out of that by quote unquote thinking good thoughts and being positive and putting a spiritual bypass on it. No, you get to be in that space as the day develops, and you'll see the changes and the shifts and the ebbs and flows of that emotion in real time, and it'll serve you. It'll serve you greatly. You'll learn more about yourself, more about your heart, more about the things that you want to do in this world. You'll learn more about the people around you, more about how you show up for yourself in this world, and what it looks like to show up in the company of these people in your life and in your world. So you want to deepen your understanding and your appreciation for the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence, the emotional state of existence. And you want to also remember that they do pass. These emotions do move through very quickly. There is just this beauty to them. They're like water. One moment you're feeling, okay, all of this. And then before you know it, someone has come along and maybe given you a hug, or maybe they just have said something and all of a sudden you were feeling completely differently. They move quickly, they shift, they transition, they ebb, they flow, they feel bigger than life sometimes. And sometimes it's like you can barely perceive them. Somewhere in the back of your mind or in your body, you're feeling something, but you don't know what it is. And that emotion resides there. It's okay for all of these things to exist. And it's beautiful. And it's very empowering. And it's very transformational for you to be able to have the ability to show up with those emotions and have conversation with them and to hold them and to get to understand them a little bit better and to walk with them and to say, today I'm actually feeling really kind of raw, and I'm still going to show up for myself. And because I'm feeling raw about this and I haven't had a chance to fully process, what I am not going to do is I am not going to demand of myself to hyper perform. I'm not going to demand of myself to push this emotion to the side. And I'm not going to demand of myself to do something that doesn't feel in alignment with me at this moment. One of the things that I always say when I'm working with entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who maybe are coaches or who teach or things that are very much in real time that allow them to do a creative expression of something. So maybe writers or photographers, right? So one of the things that we talk about is be mindful and make sure you're not forcing yourself to do something creative when you're not feeling it, because what ends up happening is everything that we try to force into submission starts to crumble. And so if you're a writer, for example, if you're a writer and you're sitting down and you're trying to hammer down this one freaking chapter, and no matter how hard you try, it's just not coming through, and it's a crap day, and you've been sitting at your desk for 5 hours, your back hurts, everything is knotted up, you're just physically uncomfortable, and you're just not there in your mind, you have just spent the entire day torturing yourself. Take a deep breath. Pull yourself away from the screen. Maybe your eyes are tired. Go grab something to eat. Maybe your body is experiencing hunger and you haven't given it a chance to tell you because you've been driving at having to do this thing so much that you just have blown past your hunger cues, because that happens a lot. Maybe you just need the day to be spent with yourself, taking care of yourself. Maybe you need to go to the spa. Maybe you need to go for a walk. Maybe you need to call your girlfriends up and do something. Maybe it's not about the forceful intent. Maybe it's about showing up with what is there for you to sit with and listen. Listen to what your body is telling you. Listen to what that emotion is bringing up. Listen to the story. Listen to the narrative. Go deeper with it. Get to know it. Date it, court it, seduce it, explore it. Observe, just get curious. This is showing up for a reason. And there is a validity to how you feel. And maybe it's that you're thinking about and ruminating upon a conversation that you had with a friend of yours, maybe a day ago, maybe 2 days ago, and you just can't let it go. Something about it is really bothering you, and you're feeling off and you're feeling out of sorts, but you don't exactly know what emotion you're experiencing. Okay, what emotion are you experiencing? Does it feel like this? Does it feel like anger? Does it feel like sadness? Does it feel like happiness? What does it feel like? Does it feel like indifference? Does it feel like unsafe? What does it feel like? Where do you feel it in your body? And what are the narratives that it's walking side by side with? Are you listening from a place of awareness, or are you just staying in the story and trying to make it mean something huge because you're feeling a certain way about it? Are you willing to pause and process and integrate and give the space and the room for this existence, the existence of your emotion, and to move through it and to see where it's coming from? Are you willing to take radical ownership and accountability of yourself, of what you are going to do and who you are going to be as you show up for yourself when this emotion shows up, when this world shows up in this particular way? Or are you going to throw the covers over your head and declare, this is the worst day ever, I don't want to do anything, the world hates me, universe hates me, nothing ever works for me, everyone is out to get me, and stay stuck in the same place without having the conversation, opening the door to the dialogue to see, okay, what is this telling me? I feel like the world is against me. Okay, what does that feel like though? It feels like pins and needles. Okay, it feels like bitterness. It feels like rejection. It feels like heartache. It feels, you start to peel back the layers, and then you can give it a voice. This reminds me of when I was little and I was in school and all the girls would pick on me and they wouldn't let me sit at the table and they were mean to me and it hurt my feelings and I was rejected. And so you start understanding. And this isn't to dismiss the emotion. Again, your emotion is valid and it deserves to exist. This is to get to know what that emotion is telling you, where it's trying to lead you, what it is saying, what it is inviting you to understand about yourself. And within that realm of understanding, we tap into deep empowerment, because from that place, we can choose to process, we can choose to integrate, we can choose to change, we can choose to transform, we can choose to evolve, we can choose to further validate, we can choose to formulate, we can choose to ponder, we can choose to do so many different things. And from that point, then we take action, and we take action from a place of empowered movement rather than simply being at the effect of the reaction because you said I didn't look good with pink on and now I feel like awful and you're a jerk and I hate you and I don't want to be around you anymore and now I'm going to call you names and belittle you and destroy your entire existence just because you said this. So we want to move beyond the reactive state and we want to start understanding, being curious. We want to start having these conversations so that we can show up for our lives in a very different way. Important elements of emotional intelligence are the ability to lean into self-awareness, self-regulation, that nervous system self-regulation that is so vital, motivation, because this allows you to dust off the cobwebs and go a little bit further and understand more, empathy, without allowing ourselves to feel the vastness. We really struggle to tap into not just the empathy, but the sympathy. And then social skills. The more adept we become at understanding our own emotional intelligence, the more beautiful our conversations, the more connected our relationships, and the more beautiful our social interactions. in this world, not just with the people around us, but also with ourselves. And then we find that this trickles down into other areas of our lives, in business, in creative spaces, with the family. I feel like a lot of us will understand that there are very few places in this life that we feel quite as activated as when we are with our families. And so having that emotional intelligence is the difference between bickering over the holidays and having a miserable time, and understanding, standing up for yourself when you need to, establishing healthy, beautiful boundaries, speaking up for yourself, leaning into your sense of integrity, opening the door to respect. Respect is huge. Respect is huge with an integrity, and respect is huge with emotional intelligence. And then moving through in a very different way. If you've ever seen those people who just seem to have it all together and they like float into a room and everyone gravitates toward them and you're like, oh, in awe of this person, they have been doing a lot of work around learning the art of emotional intelligence. Not that they're showing up stoically. I mean, some people do that, but in this example, for the sake of this example, they're not showing up stoically. They're showing up with their hearts on their sleeves. Some of the stories that we admire the most are the stories that are most heartbreaking. The stories that you sit there and you go, oh, you went through all of that and you still believe in love. You went through all of that and you still believe in miracles. And we're like sobbing. There's like tears running down our faces because this person has just said such beautiful things about their lives and their experiences. And oh my God, the emotion, how could they possibly survive? Because they've leaned into the process. They have welcomed in the experience. They have welcomed the fullness of their lives, the fullness of that emotion. They have learned from it. They have asked questions. They have understood that it doesn't have to be easy in order for it to be something that feeds their souls, that allows them to grow, that gives them that space to take up room in this world, and where they find their voice. They've learned to connect to that, not to push it to the side and pretend it's not there. A lot of times when that does happen, we can sense it. We can feel that there's like a disconnect. It's like, oh, you're being vulnerable, I think, but something about this doesn't feel that emotion, right? It doesn't feel like something is. And I actually love this conversation because in terms of that emotional intelligence, we also get that connector to our own spidey sense. I will say this. I believe that there is a huge difference, and this is important to note. There is a huge difference between intuition, which is a sensory experience, and it's very calm, and it doesn't scream at you. It doesn't look like a scene from That's So Raven where like everything goes crazy. No, it's actually very soft, and it's just an inner knowing, a sensing. It's not a feeling. That's one way to know that it is not your intuition, is when you are feeling all of the feels. It's more a sense. Now, what I do love about learning from our feelings is that the more attuned we become with our actual feelings, the more we hold them, the more space we can grant them, the more keenly aware we will become to the things that feel in and or out of alignment with ourselves. We'll know, we'll be like, something feels off. Something feels different. Something feels, what is it? What am I feeling? What is it that I'm trying to express? Oh, this feels unsafe. This feels strenuous. This feels tense. And you start leaning into that and allowing that doorway to open. Also allows you to become a little bit more finely attuned to the world around you. And it changes the dynamic of how you show up in this world. So think about where in your life you have been stuffing these emotions down because they will get stuck in your body. And they'll reside there until we make room for them and we allow them to shift and to move, right? And think about where in your life you have been afraid of feeling, because to you, if I feel this today, if I feel this heartbreak, I'm never going to recover from it. And why do you believe that? And can you see how up to now you have already gone through some of the most difficult chapters of your life to date, and yet you are still here and you are still showing up and you are still doing wonderfully, and everything is still okay, because emotional intelligence allows us to understand that no matter what we are feeling, no matter the intensity, no matter the discomfort, no matter the fear, no matter what we are feeling, we are going to be okay. As long as we lean in, and when we understand that I got me. I got me. I am safe. I'm going to hold myself. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to pour into myself. I'm going to be devoted to me. I will show up for myself through this. It is difficult and it feels like it could break me into a million pieces, and it is not going to. And I will hold it, and I know that it's uncomfortable, and I know that it is challenging, and I can make it through, and I know I have made it through before, and I'm going to make it through again, and I'm going to be okay. That is also emotional intelligence. Learn from that emotion. Lean into the emotion. Where can you open up the doorways? Where can you allow yourself to validate those emotions, to see them as beautiful echoes, beautiful narratives, beautiful bits and pieces of yourself that you get to experience and learn from and bring light into and share with the world around you, and that through them, you can show up from a place of deeper strength and a higher quality of being, and that you can choose. You can continue to choose to be at the helm rather than at the effect of. You get to be in this beautiful world where your emotions are not minimized, they're not ridiculed, they're not belittled, they're not wronged. They are held as sacred transmissions from yourself to yourself. And as your higher self, you get to show up for them through you to create a life that feels more expansive, more beautiful, more awe-inspiring than you could have ever possibly imagined. And it had nothing to do with how much you controlled yourself. It had nothing to do with how much you didn't show everybody what you were feeling. It didn't have to do with how picture perfect your life looked. It didn't have to do with how only you are the smile of the party and the life of the party, and you can show up for your friends when you're happy, but not when you are not happy. That's the other thing about this too. I think a lot of times, because we are afraid of that pushing off of our own emotional beingness, we believe that we can only show the people in our lives the best version of ourselves. And in our minds, that best version of ourselves might be the one that's always smiling, the one that has energy, the one that's ready to go. And yet, we want to, as sovereign beings, we want to surround ourselves with people who are going to hold everything, who will lean into our vastness and say, I know, I see that you are having a really tough time and your heart is breaking, and you are still loved, and you are still welcome, and you are still valid and worthy and amazing, and I am here. And we want that same level of devotion from ourselves. Don't believe that you are only worthy and valuable and amazing as long as you are happy. Those as long as statements are not serving you. This isn't about you showing up to the world only when everything is pink and roses and butterflies and amazing. No, this is about you showing up for yourself every step of the way, with your heart breaking, with your face red because you're furious, with sweat running down your armpits because there's nerves, and this is the first time you've done this and you're a little out of your comfort zone with everything. Every part of who you are gets to exist in this world, and every part of you, exactly as you are, to include your emotions, is valid and important and sacred and divine. And the more you lean into that, the more capable you will be to expand that emotional intelligence and to pause, to add that in between moment where you don't just follow the emotion, but where you break and you say, oof, okay, feeling this, gotta process, be right back. We talk about this when I get back, and when I get back, we're gonna deepen this conversation. Right now, no. Lean into it, melt into it, love your emotions. The mastery of emotional intelligence is this beautiful thing that we get to do for the rest of our lives. We're in the way of mastery. It doesn't mean that we become masterful right away. We tried it once, we did it once, and now we're perfect forever, and we're never going to need to tap into our emotional intelligence ever again because we're just great at it. We just know what we're doing. No. Process. Everything is a process. Everything is an art form. And art takes time. And sometimes you go back to the easel and you repaint things. Sometimes you have to go and really take things away from a tapestry, pull the thread out, start over. The artful presence is something that continues to grow and evolve and change and shift, and it gets to be perfectible, not perfect. And so with your emotional intelligence, it's the same. So think about that. Think about places and times in your life and situations where you've been like, I don't want to feel this. I'm just going to push it off. I'm going to ignore it. It's not there. I don't see it. It doesn't happen. If I don't see it and it didn't happen, then that means that I'm okay. And yeah, no, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to address it. Nope. Running away. Think about times where you've done that. Think about times where you've moved into that reactive state and you're like, oh man, I said some things, I did some things, and I was, yeah, okay. Now I'm going to take ownership and accountability for that and move through what I need to move through because I was reactive in that emotion. Think about times in your life when you've not even understood. Wow, what does this feel like? Do I know what feeling feels like? Can I feel feeling? And start exploring that in a physical way. Sometimes the physical is the easiest way to access. Maybe it starts with a yoga class. Maybe it starts with learning what a certain emotion, just one tiny emotion feels like in your body. And think about what that experience with your connections, with your intimacy, with your relationships, with your job, with your clients, with your coworkers. What would that be like if your emotional intelligence held just a little bit more depth, a little bit more breadth? If it was just a little bit more nuanced, if it wasn't just so rigid, if it didn't hinge or depend on as long as or this way or the highway. It's either or. No, leave those either or statements behind. Lean into that space of fluidity. Remember also, think about a time in your life when you felt like you really believed that this emotion was going to be the end of you, and notice that you're still here, and embrace it and allow it and love it. And learn to lean into these spaces from a place of personal sovereignty. You are the one. You get to choose. So think about that. Let me know what this exploration yields. And if you have any questions, if you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I feel like that started something, but I want to go deeper with this emotional intelligence stuff, I want to learn more, let me know. Email me, info@yoursoulfulgoddess.com, and find me on Instagram @yoursoulfulgoddess. You can find me here every other Monday for the podcast. And I am always happy to connect with you, and always. And I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.